The wind combed through the tall grass like fingers through forgotten hair, and the woman rode into it with her back straight and her jaw set. Dust clung to her skirts and bonnet, the same shade as the cracked leather satchel bouncing gently at her hip. Inside, 3 things: a letter offering marriage, a worn photograph of herself taken 12 years ago, and a tin ring that smelled faintly of rust and desperation. She hadn't been called beautiful in years. Not since her last employer's wife whispered to another woman, "Ain't she past the marrying kind?" But men out here didn't want beauty. They wanted grit, strong hands, a woman who could gut a chicken and still smile when the baby wailed. So she lied, took the offer, rode west on horseback, half sure she'd die before she arrived. The town of Dry Fork was nothing but wood, dust, and suspicion. 2 saloons, 1 church, no doctor. She found her way to the ranch on the northern ridge by asking for the man who posted the letter. Faces turned away. No one smiled. He opened the door before she could knock. Tall, maybe early 30s, lean like a fence post, with eyes that scanned her the way a man surveys a horse he didn't order. "You're her?" he asked. She stepped down from her saddle slowly. "I am." He didn't offer a hand, just let the silence stretch long and dry. His mother came behind him, older, sharp, wearing grief like perfume. Her gaze cut harder than his words did. "You look older than the photo," the woman said. "I was younger when it was taken." Neither man nor mother invited her inside, but she stepped through the door anyway, as if she belonged to the wood and air more than to people. The house smelled of smoke and boiled beans. She stood at the hearth, unasked, warming fingers that had known too many winters. At dinner, the clatter of utensils tried and failed to drown the awkward quiet. She chewed slowly, watching him. "What's your name?" he finally asked. She gave it quietly. He didn't repeat it. "You said 30, his mother said, not looking up. "I said what I needed to," she replied. "Just like your son did. Hard worker. No questions." That was the ad. The son narrowed his eyes. That ad wasn't for someone twice my age. Her voice didn't rise. "Then maybe you should have written that part down." The mother scoffed. The man stood and walked out into the night without another word. She cleared her own plate, then theirs. They gave her the barn. It was a wide, wind-bitten thing that smelled of hay and old sorrow. She laid out her bedroll on a pile of straw, careful not to disturb the corner where a coyote had once made a den. Lighting the lantern, her hands trembled, not from cold, but the weight of it all. She held the tin ring in her palm. It had been given to her once, by a boy who didn't know what he wanted. He was long dead now. Cholera. Or maybe war. She couldn't remember which. She stayed 3 days. She cleaned the coop, repaired a fence post the wind had splintered, showed the rancher's mother how to set a dough that rose right even without fresh yeast. She worked without being asked. And still, he barely looked at her. On the 4th morning, he handed her a leather pouch. Coins jingled inside. "That's your trouble fee," he said, not meeting her eyes. "I didn't come for charity. You didn't come with truth either." She felt the words more than heard them, like thunder still far off, but coming fast. "I came with hands at work. That should be enough." "For someone else," he said. The cold hit harder than she expected when she stepped outside. The wind had shifted. Northbound, biting. She didn't ask for a horse. Took her own, saddle already warm. No one watched her ride off, but she didn't look back either. She followed the river, let it pull her west. There was no destination, only forward. Midday, the storm came. It wasn't the roaring kind, just a steady, quiet rain that soaked bones. She found an old cottonwood by the bank and sat beneath it, huddled in her wool shawl. A hawk circled above, calling once before vanishing behind gray sky. She closed her eyes and whispered a name. Not hers, not his, not even the boy with the tin ring. Just a name that felt safe in her mouth, like honey on sore gums. When she opened them, the sun was breaking through the clouds in thin spears. The rain slowed, then stopped. She rose stiffly, wiping wet dirt from her palms. The road curved ahead, hidden by the ridge. Something waited there, maybe mercy, maybe another door slammed shut. She rode toward it anyway. Because some women aren't made for welcome mats and soft words. Some are made for wind and knives, and the hard-earned peace that comes only after everything else is gone. And the land, at least, didn't care how old she was. It only cared whether she kept riding. So she did. By the third evening, the horizon was a knife edge of fire and ash. Her horse had begun to limp, and her own bones felt hollow, clattering beneath her skin like the last beans in a can. The land stretched empty in all directions, save for a cluster of cottonwoods huddled against a low rise ahead. Smoke twisted skyward in a thin column, blue and deliberate. She approached slow, cautious. The cabin emerged in pieces. First the chimney, then the roof sloping under the weight of years, then the man standing on the porch with a rifle resting across his arms. He didn't raise it, didn't call out, just stood, unmoving, like an old tree daring a storm to test it. She stopped 10 paces away. "I'm not trouble," she said. Her voice cracked from disuse. "That's what trouble usually says," he replied. She waited. The silence between them grew, stretched until the prairie wind began to seem loud. Then, without a word, he turned and pushed the door open, leaving it swinging like an uncertain invitation. Inside was heat, real wood-fed warmth that smelled of juniper smoke and something faintly metallic, old iron, maybe blood once. The space was small but clean. A fire crackled in the hearth. No decorations, no sentiment. Just a table, 2 chairs, a stove, and a single cot tucked beneath a window smeared with dust and light. He nodded toward a bench. She sat. He poured coffee into a dented tin cup and handed it over. No questions. No name asked. They sat, the only sound the creak of the wind against the cabin walls and the occasional pop of a sapknot in a fire. His face was not young, but it wasn't soft with age either. His beard was silver threaded through with dusk. One I didn't track fully, clouded, milky, but not dull. The other watched her with the steady calm of someone who'd already survived what most couldn't imagine. After a long while he said, "I don't have much, but I got quiet. If that's enough, you can stay." "It is," she said, and meant it more than she thought she could. She took to chores without being asked. Stoked the fire each morning, swept the floor with a bundle of dried sage, patched a torn shirt she found hanging like a flag of surrender near the stove. He didn't thank her, didn't stop her. They shared a rhythm, wordless and without obligation. He never asked what she was running from. She never asked what he'd lost. But in the way he touched the rifle when thunder rolled far off, and the way she flinched at the sight of her own reflection in the window at dusk, they knew. At night, she lay on a wool blanket before the fire while he took the cot. Sometimes, when the wind cried loud enough, she thought she heard him whisper names in his sleep. None were hers. One sounded like a child's. On the 5th evening, he sat whittling at the table. A curl of cedar fell with each stroke. She stirred beans on the stove. No words had passed all day. He said, had a son once. Half Comanche. Smart boy. Knew when to speak and when to listen. She turned, watching him over her shoulder. Gone now. Somewhere. Not here. I reckon that counts. She didn't press. I buried his mother under that cottonwood ridge, he said, voice low. Fever took her. Could have left her when she got sick, but I stayed. Had to. Some debts you don't pay with silver. She nodded, slow. I've buried too. Men. Hopes. That night, she found a small wooden carving left on her folded blanket. A hawk, wings stretched, head tilted like it saw something no one else did. She held it in both hands and felt the ridges, the notches, the care. He didn't mention it. She didn't thank him. When she rose early the next morning, he was already outside, splitting logs with slow, steady strikes. She brought him water. He took it with a nod. No smile, but no distance either. Over days, their silence grew into something more than absence. It became comfort, understanding. They moved like gears in an old watch, each motion making the other easier, truer. She found a fiddle in the cellar, strings loose, but tunable. That night, she played. Nothing grand, just a wandering melody, the kind you hum when walking alone. He closed his eyes and leaned back, listening like it mattered. "You play like someone who's waited too long to speak," he murmured. She stopped, the bow hovering. "I was told once my voice was too much," she said. "So I learned to let my hands do the talking. Seems they got a lot to say." The firelight made shadows of them both, hers long and thin, his wide and bent. The wood between them creaked as it settled. She didn't move closer, but she didn't retreat either. When she laid down that night, she felt a heaviness leave her. Not all of it, but enough to sleep. The next morning, she woke to gunfire. Not close, distant, but clear. 2 sharp reports. Then silence. She stepped outside. He was already saddling his horse, face grim. Riders past the ridge. "Might be nothing. Or it might be everything," she replied. His eyes met hers. A moment held. Something unspoken moved between them. Not fear, not yet trust. Recognition, maybe. "I won't ask you to stay," he said. "But if you do, you'll have to stand your ground." She adjusted her shawl, tightened the laces of her boots. "I've been running long enough." He gave a slow nod. Not approval, respect. As the sun climbed, painting the ridge in amber, they stood side by side, 2 ghosts refusing to disappear. And somewhere beyond the trees, trouble began to stir again. By dusk, the tracks were fresh and wide, 3 horses, maybe 4. Shod. Not local stock. He crouched low near the cottonwood ridge, dragging 2 fingers across the torn earth like a priest reading scripture. She stood behind him, shawl drawn tight, the air pressed full with the hush of something not yet happened. "They knew where they were going," he said quietly. "Didn't wander." She scanned the horizon, where the land seemed to hold its breath. "How far?" "Half a day, no more. Close enough to smell our fire if they're downwind." He rose slow, each movement deliberate, as if the years had settled in his joints like dust in the floorboards. She watched him adjust the rifle strap across his shoulder. Not fear in the motion, just memory. "I've seen men come looking like this," he said. "Quiet men. Sharp. Paid in coin that reeks of blood and ash. You think they're hunting you? I think some debts circle back even after the grave's been filled." She nodded, not asking more. Some stories were best left unsaid, especially when the telling would only open wounds that never really closed. They fortified the cabin, reinforced the shutters with fence boards, dug shallow trenches where soft clay allowed it, set traps fashioned from wire, nails, and instinct. Not to win, but to warn. That night, he cooked stew with jerky and root vegetables, and they ate at the table, the silence between them thick with anticipation. When thunder cracked far off, neither flinched. The storm was still out there, but now it had a shape. "I wasn't always alone," she said, breaking the quiet. Her voice was low, almost lost in the hiss of a hearth. "Had a sister once. Ran off east with a gambler and never wrote back. Another stayed and drank herself into a grave she never noticed she was digging." He listened, spoon still in hand. "I stayed put too long," she added. "Thought a woman's worth dried up after 30. Like bread gone stale on the shelf." His eyes softened, but he didn't pity her. She would have hated that. "You didn't go stale," he said. "You just got strong where it doesn't show." She smiled then, not wide, not bright, but true. That night, he unrolled a second blanket near the fire. Not invitation, not need, just presence. A silent promise, you don't have to be alone, not here, not now. She didn't sleep well. The dark was thick with thoughts that came tapping like bone knuckles on glass. But each time she woke, she could hear him breathing near the hearth, steady as a ticking clock. And that was enough. By morning, the wind had changed. Southbound. Smoke from their chimney would travel far. They split wood together without speaking, rhythm sinking between each swing. She'd always been strong for her size, but he made the axe look like part of his arm. At one point, he paused, wiping his brow with his sleeve. "You're not like other women who pass through," he said. She didn't stop working. "Maybe because I stayed. Maybe because you never asked me to change." She looked up then, meeting his eyes. "Why would I ask you to leave behind the parts that made you survive?" The words sat between them like firelight, warm, dangerous, necessary. Around midday, the first rider came into view. Not close, just a shadow along the rise, still and watchful. She spotted him first. "Scouting," she said. "Testing how close they can get." He nodded and brought out the rifle. Cleaned it slow, reverent. "You ever shot one?" he asked. "I've done worse." He didn't question her further. He handed her a second weapon, a double-barrel shotgun with a splintered stock. Heavy. Reliable. They made no attempt to hide their watchfulness. Whoever was out there already knew they were seen. The sun dipped low, bleeding orange into the scrub. Coyotes cried in the distance, as if sensing the shift in the air. She lit the lantern inside, its glow soft but firm. He locked the door, then sat with his back against it, boots planted, gun in hand. She watched him, admiring the way his stillness wasn't fear, but preparation. A man who had stood at the edge before and stepped forward anyway. "Tell me something real," she said, "in case tonight's the end of it." He looked over at her, shadows carving valleys into his face. Then, after a long pause, he spoke. "I was 17 when I killed my first man. He was stealing a horse, mine. I warned him." He laughed. "Then I didn't warn again." Her gaze didn't leave his. "Did it get easier?" "No," he said. "And I reckon it shouldn't." She looked toward the window, toward the dark pressed thick against the glass. "Then we're still human." Just before dawn, she stepped outside, shotgun in hand, breath fogging in the brittle air. No movement. No birdsong. Just frost on the grass, like ash on the living. Then she saw it. A mark carved into the cottonwood by the ridge, fresh. A symbol she didn't recognize. Not a gang brand, but something older. She traced it with her fingers, cold biting into her skin. He joined her silently, eyes scanning the tree lean. "They're not just men," she said. "No," he agreed. "There's something worse. The kind that smile when they kill." Back at the cabin, she cleaned the gun with shaking fingers. He poured her coffee without a word. The storm hadn't hit yet, but it was close enough to taste. And this time, neither of them would run. The first shot came at dawn. A single crack, sharp as bone breaking in stillness, sent a jay shrieking from the cottonwood. The echo lingered ghost-like across the ridge. She hit the floorboards without thinking, breath caught in her chest like a bird in a snare. He was already up, rifle at the window, calm as water before storm. "Warning shot," he said. "They're not in a hurry." She crawled to the other side of the cabin, checking the traps near the door. Her hands didn't shake. Not now. Not when everything inside her had settled into a grim, old knowing, like a wound remembering its shape. He glanced down. "You still sure about this?" She met his gaze across the room, heart hammering behind her ribs. "I didn't come this far to die hiding." The next shot hit the shutter. Wood splintered. Dust rained onto the table. Then silence. Too long. Too wide. "They're circling," he murmured, testing for a weak spot. She peered out through a gap in the boards. Movement barely there. A shadow slipped behind a mesquite, then another at the tree line. 3. No 4. The same number they'd tracked days before. "They're waiting for something," she whispered. He nodded. "Orders." Outside, the sun rose slow, casting long, golden fingers across the dirt. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt like a trap snapping shut. One of the riders stepped forward, bold, confident. He wore a coat the color of dried blood and carried his pistol low, like he expected to use it before breakfast. He stopped just short of the cabin's edge, close enough to smell the chimney smoke. "You inside," he called. Man of the house, woman at his side. "I know who you are. We're not here to kill you. We're here to collect." No response. The man smiled, amused at his own echo. "Word is, you took something that don't belong. Maybe you forgot how promises work out here. Maybe you think the wind don't carry your name anymore." She stared at the man, heart steady now. A different kind of calm had taken root inside her, a fire that no storm could snuff. He stepped forward, voice hardening. "Come out now, and we'll make it quick. Keep hiding, and we'll make it loud." He reached for his gun. The rifle cracked before he touched the grip. The shot took him through the collarbone. He staggered back, shock written clean across his face before he dropped like wet canvas. Then it began. Gunfire erupted in bursts, wild and furious. The cabin shuddered under the barrage. He returned fire through a narrow slit in the wall, counting his shots under breath. 6 rounds left, he said. Then it's blades. She stayed low, dragging the shotgun to the back door where one of the traps waited. If they flanked, she'd greet them. Time blurred into noise and recoil. One man tried the front, got his leg caught in a bear jaw trap, and screamed until she silenced him with a clean shot. Another fell to the hidden snare behind the water trough, impaled through the ribs. That left one. Silence returned. Blood soaked the dust outside, already turning to rust in the heat. The air smelled like powder and iron and the old rut of something unburied. He reloaded slow, eyes scanning the horizon. There's always one who waits. The clever one. And then a voice. Low. Close. From inside. She spun. The last man had slipped through the root cellar hatch, open, maybe from the night before. He stood behind her now, knife to her throat, boots silent on the earth-packed floor. She didn't cry out. Didn't flinch. He barked toward the other man. Drop it. Or I carve her deep enough she don't sing again. The gun lowered. But the look in his eye was thunder just before it breaks. The intruder pressed the blade closer. I know who you are. What you left behind. The half-breed son. The blood in your debt. She whispered then, voice steady. You're wrong. The man blinked. She slammed her heel into his shin, twisted out of his grip, and drove her elbow into his ribs. The knife fell. She caught it midair and buried it beneath his collarbone. He fell without a sound, eyes still wide, breath rattling out of him like coins dropped in a bucket. She stood, chest heaving, blood soaking her sleeve. The blade clattered to the floor. The man at the door hadn't moved, just watched. You all right? He asked. She nodded, slow. Good, he said. Because you saved us both. They buried the bodies far from the cabin, under a ridge where no roots would mourn them. No prayers. Just dirt and wind and silence. Later, she sat on the porch, watching the prairie bend beneath the weight of evening. He joined her, quiet, boots scuffing the floorboards as he lowered himself beside her. No one'll come looking for them, he said. They never do, she replied. He held something in his hand, a ring, dull and bent from years in a pouch, never worn. He didn't offer it, just showed it to her. I gave this to someone once, he said. She never wore it, said rings didn't suit the life we lived. She looked at him, then at the horizon. What about now? He didn't answer right away, just took her hand, rough and stained like his, and pressed the ring into her palm. I figure we both deserve something that lasts, he said. Doesn't have to be promises, just peace. She didn't put the ring on. She held it like a stone warmed in the sun, like a memory that hadn't faded yet. And for the first time in a long, long while, she believed there might be more days ahead worth living for, not because of what they'd survived, but because of who they'd chosen to become. Beside her, he lit a match, pipe cradled in his teeth. The flame flared, then settled. So did the wind. The prairie stretched before them, vast and quiet. Not empty. Not anymore.